What if Darth Vader survived Return of the Jedi? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. The galaxy's most feared enforcer is dying. Luke Skywalker should let him die. Everyone expects Darth Vader to perish on the exploding Death Star. But what if Luke makes a different choice? What if the Dark Lord lives? The Death Star explodes around them. Luke cradles his father's broken form. Vader's breathing is failing. His mask is cracked. Death seems certain. But Luke reaches deep into the Force. He won't lose his father now. Not when redemption has just begun. This single decision will shatter the galaxy's expectations. The war criminal who destroyed worlds will face justice while still breathing. The monster who killed younglings will seek atonement among the living. The enforcer of tyranny will stand trial before his victims. And the galaxy will learn whether true redemption is even possible. Luke, I want to look on you with my own eyes. The mask releases with a soft hiss of escaping air, revealing Anakin's scarred, pale face beneath. Years of living within the mechanical suit have left their mark. His skin is translucent, marked by old burns and surgical scars. But his eyes are clear for the first time in decades. As his breathing grows more labored without the mask's assistance, Luke feels a desperate surge of determination through the Force. He won't lose his father now. Not when he's finally found him again. Not when redemption has just begun. No, I'm not leaving you here. Luke's voice carries a strength that surprises even him. Using the Force, he reaches deep into his father's failing body, feeling for any spark of life that remains. There, beneath the extensive cybernetics and damaged organs, he senses it. A faint heartbeat, weak but persistent, like a candle flame guttering in the wind, but refusing to die. The Force flows through Luke as never before. Not the aggressive power he felt when fighting the Emperor, but something gentler, more healing. Life energy passes from son to father, buying precious moments. Luke lifts his father's massive frame, the black armor heavier than he expected, but somehow manageable through his Force-enhanced strength. Vader's cape trails behind them as they move through corridors that grow more dangerous. By the second, sparks rain from damaged power conduits, and the deck plating buckles under their feet. Emergency lighting flickers red, casting ominous shadows that dance along the walls. Other escaping personnel, Imperial officers and technicians, rush past them without recognition, too focused on their own survival to notice the Dark Lord being carried to safety. Each step requires careful navigation around fallen debris and gaps in the flooring where entire sections have collapsed into lower decks. Luke's breathing is labored, not just from the physical exertion, but from maintaining the Force connection that's keeping his father alive. Sweat beads on his forehead as he channels his own life force into Vader's failing systems, feeling the cybernetic implants respond to his touch, coaxing damaged circuits back to temporary function. The Lambda-class shuttle sits in its docking bay like a white bird of prey, its wings folded upward in landing configuration. Around them, other ships launch in desperate escape attempts, some making it clear before debris can crush them, others less fortunate. Luke maneuvers his father into the shuttle's passenger compartment, laying him carefully on the small medical cot that every Imperial shuttle carries for wounded officers. The shuttle's basic medical systems activate automatically, sensors scanning Vader's condition and providing a grim readout. Critical organ failure, massive cybernetic damage, severe electrical burns from Force lightning, cans. By all accounts, the Dark Lord of the Sith should already be dead. But Luke refuses to accept that diagnosis. His hands move over the medical controls with surprising competence. Years of technical training on Tatooine, translating well to the shuttle systems. As they lift off from the dying Death Star, Luke watches through the rear viewport as the massive battle station tears itself apart. The explosion that destroys the reactor creates a chain reaction. Each detonation more spectacular than the last. Entire sections of the station spiral away into space, carrying with them the dreams of Imperial dominance and the Emperor's ultimate weapon. But Luke's attention is entirely focused on the man lying before him. The steady beep of the medical monitor, the only sound that matters. Instead of setting course for Endor and the celebration that awaits the Rebel Alliance, Luke makes a decision that will change the course of galactic history. His fingers dance over the navigation computer, inputting coordinates for a system he remembers from ancient Jedi texts. Polis Massa, an asteroid field in the Outer Rim that once housed a mining operation and later served as a secret medical facility during the Clone Wars. If anywhere in the galaxy can save his father's life, it would be there. The jump to hyperspace is rougher than usual. The shuttle system still recovering from their exposure to the Death Star's destruction. Blue and white stars streak past the viewport as they hurtle through dimensions beyond normal space. In the medical bay, alarms begin sounding as Vader's condition deteriorates further. His breathing becomes more irregular, and the readouts show his artificial heart struggling to maintain circulation. Luke doesn't hesitate. Placing his hands on his father's chest, he opens himself completely to the Force, letting it flow through him like a river. The sensation is unlike anything he's experienced before. Not the focused power he used in lightsaber combat, but something vast and nurturing. Through their connection, he feels his father's pain, his regret, his desperate desire to live long enough to know his son better. That desire becomes Luke's anchor, giving him the strength to maintain the healing trance for the entire journey. When they drop out of hyperspace near Polis Massa, Luke is exhausted but determined. The asteroid field stretches before them, chunks of rock drifting in lazy orbits around what was once a planet. Hidden among them is their destination, a research facility built into one of the larger asteroids. Its entrance concealed, but its beacons still broadcasting on frequencies known only to the Jedi Order. The facility is a marvel of engineering, carved directly into the asteroid's core and equipped with medical technology that was cutting edge even during the Republic's golden age. Automated systems activate as Luke's shuttle enters the docking bay, recognizing Jedi clearance codes that haven't been used in 20 years. The asteroid's artificial gravity takes hold, and breathable atmosphere floods the bay as protective shields activate. Luke works frantically alongside the facility's medical droids, their ancient programming still functional after decades of dormancy. The droids move with clinical precision, their sensors analyzing every aspect of Vader's condition, while Luke provides Force-assisted guidance. They quickly determine that the Emperor's lightning has fried many of the cybernetic systems that keep Vader alive, while his organic organs are failing from the strain of their violent conflict. The surgery that follows lasts for 12 hours. Luke remains conscious throughout, his Force connection with his father never wavering even as exhaustion threatens to overwhelm him. He watches as the medical droids carefully remove damaged cybernetic components, replacing them with parts salvaged from the facility's stores. Some systems are too specialized to replace, forcing the droids to reroute neural pathways and create workaround solutions. The most delicate work involves Vader's respiratory system. The damage to his lungs from Mustafar, compounded by decades of dependence on artificial breathing apparatus, has left him barely able to survive without mechanical assistance. But the facility's advanced medical technology offers possibilities that the Empire's cruder cybernetics never could. New synthetic lung tissue is grown in biotanks, designed to interface seamlessly with Vader's existing biology. As the hours pass, Luke feels his father's life force slowly stabilizing. The desperate struggle for survival gives way to something more sustainable, though still fragile. Color begins to return to Vader's pale skin, and his breathing becomes more regular even without the mask's assistance. When the surgery is finally complete, both patient and son are exhausted, but alive. Recovery comes slowly, measured in days rather than hours. Luke never leaves his father's side, sleeping in a chair beside the medical bed and taking his meals from the facility's emergency stores. During the quiet moments, he studies his father's face, trying to reconcile this vulnerable man with the terrifying figure who had haunted his nightmares. The first sign of returning consciousness comes on the third day, when Vader's fingers twitch slightly in response to Luke's voice. His eyes remain closed, but the monitoring equipment shows increased brain activity. Luke continues talking, sharing stories about his life on Tatooine, his training with Yoda, his growing understanding of the Force. He tells his father about Owen and Beru, about their simple life as moisture farmers, about how they had spoken of Anakin Skywalker with both sadness and fondness. When Vader's eyes finally open on the fifth day, they're no longer the burning yellow of the Sith. The dark side corruption that had marked his features for decades has begun to fade, leaving behind eyes that are blue like Luke's own. His voice, when he finally speaks, is weak but unmistakably human. No longer the mechanical rasp of Darth Vader, but the voice of Anakin Skywalker. Luke. The word is barely a whisper, but it carries more emotion than any of Vader's previous pronouncements. I should have died on that station. I should have paid for my crimes. No, Father. Luke takes his hand, feeling the strange combination of flesh and metal, organic nerves interfacing with cybernetic sensors. You saved me. You saved all of us. You deserve a chance to live as Anakin Skywalker again. But even as father and son begin to forge a new relationship in the isolation of their hidden refuge, the galaxy beyond continues to turn. On Endor's forest moon, the celebration of the Empire's defeat is tinged with worry about Luke's absence. The young Jedi's friends have searched the wreckage of the Death Star's debris field, but found no trace of him or the shuttle he took to rescue his father. Princess Leia feels something through their Force bond, a mixture of hope and deep secrecy that troubles her. She knows Luke is alive. Their connection through the Force is too strong for death to sever. But she also senses that he's hiding something monumental from her. The sensation keeps her awake at night, staring up at the stars and wondering what could be important enough for her brother to maintain such complete silence. Han Solo tries to be optimistic, cracking jokes about Luke's tendency to disappear when things get complicated. But even he can't hide his concern. The smuggler organizes search parties, sends out feelers through his criminal contacts, and monitors Imperial communication frequencies for any sign of his friend. Chewbacca, whose Wookiee senses are more attuned to emotional undercurrents, growls his own worries about what might have happened to their young Jedi ally. Meanwhile, scattered across the galaxy, the remnants of the Imperial fleet struggle to maintain cohesion in the aftermath of their Emperor's death. On the bridge of the Superstar Destroyer, Executor's sister ship, Intimidator, Admiral Piet stands before a holographic display showing the positions of remaining Imperial forces. The fleet has been reduced to a fraction of its former strength, but Piet is a survivor who has served under Vader long enough to understand the importance of adaptation. Admiral, we're receiving scattered reports from Death Star escape pods. Piet's aide reports, his voice carefully neutral. Most describe the station's destruction in accordance with our observations, but several mention seeing a Lambda-class shuttle departing the hangar bay just minutes before the reactor explosion. Piet's interest sharpens immediately. The possibility that someone significant might have escaped the Death Star's destruction offers a glimmer of hope in an otherwise desperate situation. Identification codes on that shuttle: unknown, sir. The transponder was either damaged or deliberately deactivated, but the timing suggests it was launched from the Imperial hangar rather than a Rebel fighter bay. The Admiral considers this information carefully. In the chaos following the Emperor's death and the loss of the Death Star, any Imperial survivor with sufficient rank could potentially provide leadership for the scattered remnants. But there's another possibility, one that makes his heart race with desperate hope. If Lord Vader somehow survived the station's destruction, everything could change. Meanwhile, in the hidden depths of the unknown regions, another Imperial remnant is already taking action. Moff Gideon commands a shadow fleet that operated independently of the main Imperial forces, conducting classified missions for the Emperor himself. When news of Palpatine's death reaches his hidden base, Gideon sees opportunity where others see disaster. Unlike other Imperial commanders who view the Empire's defeat as an ending, Gideon recognizes it as a chance for transformation. The old order was flawed, weakened by bureaucracy and the Emperor's increasingly erratic behavior. But from its ashes, something new could emerge. Something stronger, more focused, more ruthlessly efficient. The reports from Death Star survivors intrigue him as much as they do Admiral Piet, but for different reasons. If Darth Vader survived, he could be either the key to Imperial restoration or the greatest threat to Gideon's own ambitions. The Dark Lord's power is undeniable, but his loyalty was always to the Emperor first, the Empire second. With Palpatine dead, where would that loyalty lie? On the other side of the galaxy. Grand Admiral Thrawn receives similar reports aboard his flagship, the Chimera. The blue-skinned Chiss studies holographic artwork from a dozen different cultures while analyzing the tactical situation with characteristic calm. Unlike his more emotional colleagues, Thrawn views the Empire's defeat not as a catastrophe, but as valuable data about Rebel capabilities and Imperial weaknesses. The possibility of high-ranking Imperial survivors interests him primarily from a strategic standpoint. If Darth Vader lived, his knowledge of Imperial resources and Rebel tactics would be invaluable. But Thrawn also recognizes the political implications. The Dark Lord's survival could either rally the scattered Imperial forces or create dangerous power struggles among the remnant factions. "Your orders, Admiral?" Captain Pelion inquires, though he already suspects what Thrawn's response will be. The Grand Admiral rarely acts on incomplete information, preferring to wait until he has a complete picture of any situation. "Continue monitoring all channels for additional intelligence," Thrawn replies, his red eyes never leaving the holographic art display. "When we know more about these survivors, we can determine how they fit into our long-term strategy." Back on Polis Massa, the days pass slowly, as Anakin continues his recovery. His physical strength returns gradually, aided by the facility's advanced rehabilitation equipment. But his emotional healing proves more challenging as his memories return, not just of his time as Vader, but of his earlier life as a Jedi. He begins to confront the full magnitude of what he's done. The hardest moments come when he remembers specific atrocities committed in the Emperor's name. The children in the Jedi Temple, their faces filled with trust even as his lightsaber ignited. The destruction of Alderaan, millions of voices crying out in the Force before being suddenly silenced. The countless officers executed for failure, their bodies left as examples to others. Each memory brings fresh waves of anguish that no amount of physical healing can touch. I destroyed everything I ever loved. Luke, he whispers during one particularly difficult night, his voice breaking with emotion. Padme, the Jedi, the Republic itself, everything I swore to protect. How can there be redemption for someone like me? Luke sits beside his father's bed, choosing his words carefully. The young Jedi has his own struggles with what his father has done. His own moments of doubt about the wisdom of saving the galaxy's most notorious war criminal. But seeing Anakin's genuine anguish, his complete acceptance of responsibility for his crimes, reinforces Luke's belief in the possibility of redemption. Because you chose to save me, Luke replies firmly. Because in your final moment, you chose love over hate, light over darkness. That choice matters, Father. It changes everything. But does it really change anything? Anakin asks, his blue eyes searching his son's face for honest answers. The dead are still dead. The suffering I caused still happened. Even if I spend the rest of my life trying to make amends. How does that balance the scales? It doesn't, Luke admits. Nothing can undo what was done, but that doesn't mean the effort is worthless. Every person you save, every wrong you right, every moment you choose to help instead of harm. Not because it erases the past, but because it creates a better future. Their conversations continue for weeks. Philosophical discussions that help both father and son understand the nature of redemption, the weight of responsibility, and the possibility of change. Luke shares what he learned from Yoda about the Force, the balance between light and dark, the importance of letting go of attachments while still maintaining compassion. Anakin, in turn, provides insights into the dark side that no Jedi text could offer. Or the seductive nature of power, the way anger and fear can corrupt even the noblest intentions. But their peaceful isolation cannot last forever. Luke's prolonged absence has created a crisis of leadership within the nascent New Republic. Without their most famous Jedi to serve as a symbol of hope and renewal, various factions begin pursuing their own agendas. Military leaders push for aggressive action against Imperial remnants, while political moderates advocate for negotiated settlements. Mon Mothma, serving as interim chancellor, finds herself struggling to maintain unity among former rebel leaders who no longer have a common enemy to fight. Regional governors who joined the rebellion for their own reasons begin asserting independence, while core world representatives push for a return to the old Republic's centralized authority. The delicate coalition that brought down the Empire threatens to fracture before it can be properly organized. Han Solo, unable to sit idle while his friend remains missing, takes matters into his own hands. Using his connections in the galactic underworld, he begins conducting his own investigation into Luke's disappearance. Lando Calrissian joins the search, bringing Cloud City's resources to bear on the problem, while Chewbacca uses his people's ancient network to gather intelligence from across the Outer Rim. The breakthrough comes from an unexpected source. Mara Jade, the Emperor's former hand, survived the Death Star's destruction and now finds herself adrift in a galaxy where her master is dead and her purpose unclear. Her Force sensitivity allows her to detect the echo of Luke's presence, faint but persistent, drawing her toward the Polis Massa system. Her arrival at the medical facility creates immediate tension. Luke recognizes her from their brief encounters during Imperial missions, while Anakin senses the dark side training that shaped her abilities. But Mara's motivations prove complex. She came seeking answers about the Emperor's death and her own future, not to carry out any Imperial mission. "You killed him," she says to Anakin, her voice carrying more curiosity than accusation. "The Emperor who made me what I am, who gave my life purpose. Now that purpose is gone, and I need to know why." Anakin studies the young woman carefully, seeing past her hostile exterior to the confusion and pain beneath. She reminds him of himself at that age. Powerful, dedicated, but ultimately serving a master who viewed her as nothing more than a tool. "Because he would have destroyed my son, and in doing so, would have destroyed the last good thing left in the galaxy." Their conversation continues for hours, Mara questioning both father and son about their motivations, their understanding of the Force, their plans for the future. She reveals intelligence about Imperial remnant activities, fragmentary reports about commanders gathering forces and resources for potential counterstrikes. Her information proves invaluable, but it also makes clear that their time in hiding is nearly over. The decision is made when Han Solo's search finally leads him to Polis Massa. The smuggler's arrival is considerably less subtle than Mara's. His ship's transponder, broadcasting his identity to every sensor in the system. When he docks with the medical facility, his hand immediately goes to his blaster upon seeing the black armored figure resting in the medical bay. Even without the distinctive mask, even weakened by injury and surgery, Vader's presence fills the room with an aura of power that makes Han's instincts scream danger. Chewbacca, who accompanied his friend on the rescue mission, roars in alarm and raises his bowcaster, the weapon's energy cell already charged for combat. "Luke, what the hell are you doing?" Han's voice is tight with disbelief and barely controlled anger. "Do you have any idea what he's done? What he's taken from us?" Luke steps between them, his lightsaber not ignited but his hand resting on its hilt, in a gesture that speaks of his determination to protect his father. "He's my father, and he saved my life. Saved all our lives by killing the Emperor. That doesn't change what he did before." Han's emotions boil over, years of suppressed rage and grief fueling his words. "He tortured Leia, froze me in carbonite, cut off your hand, killed countless innocents. You can't just forget all that because he had one moment of conscience." "I'm not asking you to forget," Luke replies, his voice steady despite the tension in the room. "I'm asking you to understand that people can change, that redemption is possible even for someone who's fallen as far as he has." The confrontation escalates as Han refuses to accept Luke's reasoning, while Chewbacca growls his own concerns about harboring the galaxy's most wanted war criminal. But it's Anakin himself who defuses the situation, struggling to sit up in his medical bed despite his weakness. Solo, the former Sith Lord, says, his voice lacking its old mechanical intimidation but carrying a different kind of authority. Redev. The quiet strength of someone who has accepted responsibility for his actions. Your anger is justified. Your hatred is earned. I have taken much from you and given nothing in return. If you believe my death would serve justice, I will not resist. The offer catches Han off guard. He had expected defiance, manipulation, or threats, not this quiet acceptance of judgment. For a moment, his blaster wavers, uncertainty replacing anger as his primary emotion. But it's Chewbacca who ultimately makes the decision, lowering his bowcaster with a thoughtful growl. Chewie's right, Han finally admits, holstering his weapon. This isn't my choice to make. The galaxy will have to decide what to do with you. But if you're lying, if this is some kind of trick, I'll finish what the Emperor started. The journey back to New Republic space is tense, with Han piloting the Millennium Falcon. While Luke tends to his father in the cargo hold, Mara Jade travels with them. Her own ship left behind on Polis Massa, as she commits to seeing how this situation resolves. The small group represents an unlikely alliance, a smuggler seeking justice, a Jedi seeking redemption for his father, a former Imperial assassin seeking purpose, and the galaxy's most notorious war criminal, seeking to atone for decades of atrocities. Their return to the New Republic fleet creates immediate chaos. News of Vader's survival spreads through the ships like wildfire, carried by communications officers who can barely believe what they're reporting. On the bridge of the Mon Calamari cruiser Home 1, Admiral Akbar receives the news with characteristic stoicism, but even his amphibious features show signs of shock. The fleet goes to high alert immediately, with starfighters launching and weapons systems powering up as if preparing for battle. But the enemy they face isn't an Imperial fleet. It's a single man lying unconscious in a medical transport, his very existence a challenge to everything the rebellion stood for. In the New Republic's makeshift capital aboard the cruiser, emergency sessions convene immediately. Military commanders, political leaders, and intelligence officers gather to debate what should be done with their unexpected prisoner. Some call for immediate execution, viewing Vader as too dangerous to allow to live under any circumstances. Others see strategic value in keeping him alive for interrogation, his knowledge of Imperial resources and tactics potentially invaluable for rooting out remaining threats. But it's Princess Leia who must confront the most difficult truth of all. When she enters the medical bay where Vader rests, unconscious and vulnerable, she sees not the terrifying figure in black armor who had tortured her on the Death Star, but a scarred, broken man who bears an unmistakable resemblance to her brother. The revelation that this monster is her biological father creates a crisis that threatens to shatter her carefully maintained composure. How could you hide this from me? Her voice shakes with betrayal as she confronts Luke outside the medical bay. How could you save the man who destroyed my world, who killed my parents, who tortured me for information about the rebellion? Because beneath that monster was still our father. Luke pleads, his own emotions raw from the strain of the past weeks. Leia, I know what he's done. I know the pain he's caused you, caused all of us. But if we execute him now, without trial, without giving him a chance to make amends, then we become no better than the empire we fought to destroy. Their argument attracts attention from other New Republic leaders, creating ripples of political tension that spread throughout the fleet. Some side with Leia's call for swift justice, while others support Luke's plea for due process. The debate becomes heated, with military officers arguing for execution on grounds of practical security, while civilian leaders worry about the precedent of summary execution without trial. Mon Mothma, maintaining her role as interim chancellor despite the growing political pressures, calls for calm deliberation. The new republic was founded on principles of justice and due process. She reminds the assembled leaders, if we abandon those principles the moment they become inconvenient, then we have lost everything we fought for. But even as the political debate rages, practical concerns mount. Keeping Vader alive requires extraordinary security measures. While the news of his survival is already spreading beyond the fleet to the general population. On worlds across the galaxy, citizens react with mixtures of fear, anger, and disbelief. Some celebrate the possibility of seeing the Empire's enforcer face justice, while others worry that his survival means the Imperial threat isn't truly ended. The situation becomes more complex when Imperial remnant forces begin mobilizing in response to reports of their former master's capture. Admiral Piet, commanding the largest remaining Imperial fleet, broadcasts a message to New Republic leadership, demanding Vader's release. His terms are simple: return the Dark Lord unharmed, or face renewed Imperial aggression against Republic worlds. Other Imperial commanders take different approaches. Moff Gideon begins covert operations to rescue Vader, not out of loyalty, but to deny the New Republic access to his knowledge and potentially recruit him for his own faction. Grand Admiral Thrawn, meanwhile, analyzes the situation with characteristic patience, waiting to see how events unfold before committing his forces to any particular course of action. The rescue attempts begin within days of Vader's capture becoming public knowledge. The first comes from Gideon's forces, a carefully planned infiltration of the New Republic fleet using captured rebel ships and false identification codes. Imperial commandos manage to penetrate the fleet's outer perimeter before being detected, leading to space battles among the Republic's own vessels as loyal and infiltrator ships exchange fire. During the chaos of the battle, the commando team reaches the medical facility where Vader is being held. But when they arrive to extract their former master, they find him conscious and aware and unwilling to leave with them. "I will not be rescued," he tells the shocked Imperial officers, his voice carrying quiet authority despite his weakened state. "The Empire is finished, and I am no longer your lord. Return to your commands and work toward peace." The commandos, trained to follow orders without question, find themselves facing an impossible situation. Their mission parameters assumed Lord Vader would want to be rescued, that he would resume his role as the Empire's enforcer. Faced with his refusal to cooperate, some withdraw in confusion, while others attempt to extract him by force. It's then that Vader demonstrates that his power has not diminished despite his physical weakness. Without rising from his medical bed, he uses the Force to disarm the remaining commandos, their weapons flying from their hands to clatter uselessly on the floor. But rather than crushing them with his power as Darth Vader would have done, he simply holds them immobile until New Republic security forces arrive. The failed rescue attempt has significant political ramifications. It proves that Imperial remnants still pose a threat, validating arguments for stronger military responses to remaining Imperial forces. But it also demonstrates Vader's apparent commitment to his new allegiance, providing evidence that his redemption might be genuine rather than a calculated deception. Luke uses this incident to argue for his father's continued survival, pointing out that Vader's cooperation could be invaluable in countering Imperial remnant activities. His intimate knowledge of Imperial command structures, resource caches, and operational procedures could help the New Republic root out threats that might otherwise persist for years. The debate shifts when Vader himself requests permission to address the New Republic leadership directly. Despite concerns about security and the political implications, Mon Mothma agrees to the unprecedented meeting. The former Dark Lord, still weak from his injuries but determined to speak. The chamber falls silent as Vader, no longer wearing his iconic armor but dressed in simple medical garments, takes the floor. Without his mask and breathing apparatus, without the trappings of Imperial authority, he appears oddly vulnerable, a middle-aged man bearing the scars of a lifetime of violence. "I do not ask for forgiveness," he begins, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber despite its lack of mechanical amplification. "What I have done cannot be undone. The lives I took cannot be returned. The suffering I caused echoes still across the galaxy. I stand before you not as Darth Vader seeking mercy, but as Anakin Skywalker ready to face the consequences of my actions." He continues, describing his fall to the dark side not as justification for his crimes, but as a warning about the corrupting nature of power and fear. He speaks of how good intentions can be perverted, how the desire to protect those we love can lead to destroying them, how the pursuit of peace can become the embrace of tyranny. "I served the Emperor for over 20 years, believing that order and strength could bring peace to the galaxy. In my arrogance, I convinced myself that any sacrifice was justified if it prevented greater suffering. I was wrong. The path I chose led only to greater darkness, greater pain, greater loss." Some in the audience remain unmoved, their hearts too hardened by Imperial oppression to accept any possibility of redemption. Representatives from Alderaan survivor colonies listen with barely contained rage, while former prisoners of Imperial justice systems sit in stony silence. But others begin to see something different in the man before them. Not the terrifying enforcer of Imperial will, but a genuinely broken individual seeking to atone. The political ramifications extend far beyond the Senate chamber. News of Vader's speech spreads across Republic worlds, carried by HoloNet transmissions and independent journalists. Public opinion remains divided, with some viewing his words as manipulation, while others see genuine remorse. Protest rallies form on dozens of worlds, some calling for his execution, others demanding due process. The situation becomes more complex when intelligence reports reveal increased Imperial remnant activity. Vader's capture has apparently galvanized some Imperial factions while demoralizing others, creating a fluid tactical situation that threatens to spiral into renewed galactic conflict. Admiral Piet's fleet moves toward Republic space, while other Imperial commanders consolidate their forces for potential operations. It's during this tense period that another threat emerges from an unexpected direction. Deep in the unknown regions, on the hidden Sith world of Exegol, ancient cultists who served the Emperor in secret begin stirring. These fanatical followers of the dark side view Vader's apparent redemption as the ultimate heresy, a betrayal of everything they believe the Sith represent. Led by a being calling himself the Dark Apostle, these cultists begin gathering forbidden artifacts and recruiting Force-sensitive individuals who can be corrupted to their cause. Their goal is not simply to rescue Vader or restore the Empire, but to purge the galaxy of what they see as the contamination of light side influence that has infected their fallen master. The first signs of their activity come through intelligence networks that Luke helped establish during his search for Jedi knowledge. Force-sensitive individuals across the galaxy begin reporting disturbing dreams and visions, while ancient Sith temples on forgotten worlds show signs of renewed activity. The patterns suggest coordination, as if someone with deep knowledge of Sith lore is awakening dormant power sources. Luke brings these reports to his father, seeking insight into threats that conventional intelligence cannot understand. Despite his redemption, Anakin's decades of dark side study provide invaluable perspective on the nature of Sith artifacts and the methods by which dark side cults operate. These are not merely Imperial remnants, Anakin explains, studying holorecords of the reported phenomena. What you're describing sounds like the work of Sith Eternals, cultists who served my master in ways even I was not aware of. If they're moving openly, it means they believe the galaxy is vulnerable to their influence. The revelation that Imperial threats extend beyond conventional military forces changes the strategic equation dramatically. The New Republic leadership realizes that Vader's knowledge might be essential not just for dealing with Imperial remnants, but for confronting dark side threats that conventional forces cannot combat effectively. Mon Mothma makes the difficult decision to propose a formal alliance with the former Sith Lord. The terms are unprecedented. Vader would provide intelligence and assistance against dark side threats in exchange for supervised freedom and the opportunity to work toward redemption through service. The proposal generates fierce debate, but the growing reports of Sith cult activity make some form of cooperation increasingly necessary. The formal trial that follows becomes the most watched legal proceeding in galactic history. Held on Coruscant, in the restored Senate chambers, it draws representatives from across the known galaxy. The chamber itself has been rebuilt from the ruins left by Palpatine's reign, its circular design allowing delegates from thousands of worlds to witness the proceedings. Vader stands before the assembled delegates, unmasked and undefended, as witness after witness testifies to his crimes. The prosecution, led by Senator Kana Omonda of Malastare, presents a methodical case spanning 3 full weeks. Each day brings new testimonies, new evidence, new revelations about the scope of Vader's crimes. Holographic displays show the destruction of entire star systems, while forensic experts detail the methods used in various atrocities. The evidence is overwhelming, painting a picture of systematic brutality that spans 2 decades. Survivors of Alderaan speak with quiet dignity about lost families and destroyed dreams. Kala Organa, Leia's distant cousin and one of the few royal family members to survive the planet's destruction, testifies about the moments before the Death Star fired. She describes the terror in Queen Breha's eyes, the desperate final transmissions from the surface, the way entire cities vanished in seconds of blinding light. "My world was peaceful," she says, her voice steady despite the tears flowing down her face. "We had art, music, philosophy. We were known for our diplomatic solutions to conflicts, our commitment to helping refugees and the oppressed. In a single moment, all of that was erased. 2 billion voices, silenced forever. Families torn apart not by war or disease or natural disaster, but by the deliberate choice of one man who decided our world's destruction would serve his political ends." Former Imperial officers describe Vader's brutal methods in excruciating detail. Admiral Kendall Ozzel's aide recounts the moment his superior was executed via force choke for what Vader considered tactical incompetence. Captain Lorth, Neda's communications officer, describes her commander's death in similar terms. The casual nature of the execution sending chills through the assembled delegates. He would walk onto our bridge, and we would all hold our breath, the officer testifies. Any mistake, any perceived failure could mean death, not court-martial, not demotion, not imprisonment, death. Immediate, brutal, inescapable. We served not out of loyalty or belief in the imperial cause, but out of pure terror. That is not leadership. That is tyranny in its most naked form. But perhaps the most devastating testimony comes from the Jedi survivors of Order 66. Master Shak Ti, one of only a handful of council members to survive the purge, takes the stand on the fourth day of proceedings. Her account of the temple massacre is delivered with Jedi composure, but her pain is evident to every Force-sensitive being in the chamber. I was in the meditation gardens when the 501st Legion arrived. She begins, her voice barely above a whisper. I felt the disturbance in the Force before I saw the first blaster shots. The younglings were in their dormitories, sleeping peacefully after a day of training. They trusted the clones. You see, these were men they had fought alongside, men who had protected them in battle. When the soldiers entered their rooms, the children thought it was some kind of drill or emergency evacuation. She pauses, composing herself before continuing. I tried to reach them, to warn them, to save as many as I could. But by the time I fought through the clone forces, the deed was done. Dozens of children, some barely past their 5th birthday, lay dead in their sleeping clothes. Their faces showed only confusion. They died, not understanding why their protectors had become their murderers. The chamber falls completely silent as she concludes her testimony. But what haunts me most is not the children's faces, but the face of the one who led the attack. I saw him through the Force, felt his presence like a wound in the fabric of existence itself. There was no hesitation, no regret, no recognition of the innocence he was destroying. In that moment, Anakin Skywalker was truly dead, replaced by something that felt only hunger for power and approval from his new master. Jedi Master Sindralig's Padawan, now grown to adulthood, testifies about watching his master fall, defending the temple archives. Former temple guards describe the systematic destruction of millennia of Jedi knowledge and artifacts. Each account builds upon the last, creating a comprehensive picture of not just physical destruction but cultural and spiritual genocide. Through it all, Vader stands silent, accepting their accusations without denial or excuse. His face shows the weight of every word, every description of atrocities committed in his name or by his hand. Luke, seated in the observer section reserved for family, watches his father absorb blow after blow, without flinching, without attempting to justify or minimize his actions. The prosecution's case concludes with a comprehensive analysis of Vader's role in the Empire's military campaigns. Battle after battle is dissected, showing how his tactical decisions consistently prioritized Imperial objectives over civilian casualties. The destruction of Jeddah City, the subjugation of Ryloth, the massacre of the Geonosian population. Each atrocity is presented with clinical precision. Senator Amanda's closing argument spans an entire day, weaving together the various testimonies into a narrative of systematic oppression and violence. This is not a case about a single moment of darkness or a temporary lapse in judgment, she declares. This is about 20 years of calculated cruelty, 20 years of choosing violence over diplomacy, fear over hope, Death over life. The defendant has shown himself capable of redemption in his final moments. But that cannot erase the suffering he chose to inflict upon the galaxy. When given the chance to speak in his own defense, Vader's response surprises everyone with its brevity and directness. He does not attempt to justify his actions or explain the circumstances that led to his fall. Instead, he accepts full responsibility for every charge brought against him. "I cannot undo what I have done," he states simply, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. "I cannot bring back the dead or heal the wounds I inflicted." Every word spoken here today has been true. Every accusation leveled against me has been earned through my own choices, my own actions, my own failures as a sentient being. He pauses, looking out over the assembled delegates, many of whom represent worlds that suffered under his reign of terror. "I do not ask for forgiveness, because forgiveness cannot be demanded. It can only be freely given, if at all. I do not claim that my final choice to save my son absolves me of the thousands of evil choices that came before. What I offer instead is whatever remains of my life, to be spent in service to those I have wronged and in prevention of others walking the path I chose." The defendant continues, his words taking on a prophetic quality that resonates through the Force itself. The dark side is seductive, promising easy answers to complex problems, simple solutions to nuanced challenges. I know its whispers intimately, its temptations, and its ultimate emptiness. I have seen what lies at the end of that path, not power, but isolation, not strength, but weakness, not fulfillment, but endless hunger that can never be satisfied. Let my knowledge serve as a warning to future generations. Let my service, however inadequate, serve as partial payment for the debt I can never fully repay. And let my survival serve as proof that redemption is possible, even for those who have fallen the furthest, if they are willing to spend whatever time remains to them in genuine service to others. The Senate's deliberations last for 2 full weeks, with delegates debating not just Vader's fate, but the very nature of justice itself. Some argue for execution as the only proportionate response to genocide and war crimes. Others advocate for life imprisonment, viewing Vader as too dangerous to ever release, but too valuable as an information source to execute. A third faction, influenced by Luke's testimony about his father's sacrifice, argues for supervised rehabilitation. The debates become heated, with some delegates walking out in protest when rehabilitation is even discussed. The representative from Alderaan's survivor colonies threatens to withdraw from the New Republic entirely if Vader is not executed. Military leaders express concerns about the precedent of allowing war criminals to escape ultimate punishment. Religious leaders from various traditions offer competing views on the nature of redemption and the possibility of absolution for genocide. The breakthrough comes when Leia herself addresses the Senate. Her testimony is perhaps the most anticipated moment of the entire trial, as everyone expects the princess to demand her father's execution. Instead, she delivers a speech that reframes the entire debate. "I have every reason to hate the man who calls himself my father," she begins, her voice strong despite the emotional weight of her words. "He destroyed my world, tortured me for information, and was responsible for the deaths of everyone I held dear in my youth. The easy choice would be to demand his death and call it justice. The satisfying choice would be to see him suffer as I have suffered, as millions have suffered at his hands. But the right choice is neither easy nor satisfying, she continues. My adoptive parents, Queen Breha and Bail Organa, taught me that true strength lies not in the exercise of power over others, but in the wisdom to know when mercy serves justice better than vengeance. They taught me that the goal of any justice system should not be to satisfy our desire for revenge, but to prevent future harm and, when possible, to heal the wounds that divide us. She turns to face Vader directly, her eyes meeting his across the chamber. I will never forgive you for what you took from me, she says quietly, but I recognize that your death would not restore my world or resurrect my parents. It would not undo the suffering you caused or bring peace to those who mourn. What it would do is close the door forever on the possibility that something good might come from something so terrible. The princess concludes her testimony with words that will be remembered long after the trial ends. Let him live, but let him live with the full weight of what he has done. Let him spend whatever years remain to him working to repair what he broke, to protect what he threatened, to build what he destroyed. Let his redemption be measured not in words or gestures, but in years of service to those he wronged. And let his survival serve as proof that our new republic is founded on hope, not hatred. The Senate's final decision reflects the complex moral and practical realities they face. Rather than execution or indefinite imprisonment, they sentence Vader to what they term redemptive service, a form of supervised rehabilitation that requires him to work directly with communities and organizations harmed by Imperial policies. The sentence is unprecedented in galactic law, designed specifically for Vader's unique circumstances. The conditions are extensive and restrictive. Vader will be monitored at all times by New Republic security forces and Force-sensitive observers. His movements will be tracked, his communications monitored, his activities supervised. He cannot travel without approval, cannot access weapons without authorization, cannot make public statements without review. Any violation of these conditions, any sign of backsliding toward darkness, will result in immediate imprisonment. But within these constraints, he will be given opportunities to make meaningful amends. He will work with Alderaanian survivor communities to establish memorials and support systems. He will assist in the rehabilitation of former Imperial worlds, using his knowledge of Imperial systems to ease their transition to democratic governance. He will contribute to the establishment of educational programs about the dangers of authoritarianism and the importance of individual moral responsibility. Most significantly, he will work with Luke and other Force users to document the dangers of the dark side and develop training methods to help future Jedi avoid the temptations that led to his fall. His intimate knowledge of Sith techniques and philosophy, while dangerous, could prove invaluable in preventing future dark side corruption. The sentence satisfies few completely, but offers something to all factions. Those seeking justice see consequences for Vader's actions, including the loss of freedom and the requirement of lifelong service to his victims. Those advocating mercy recognize the possibility of redemption through works rather than mere words. Military leaders gain access to his knowledge of Imperial operations and remaining threats, while Jedi representatives hope to learn from his understanding of the dark side's dangers. But even as the trial concludes and Vader begins his supervised service, new threats emerge from the galaxy's darkest corners. The reports that Luke had brought to his father's attention during the trial proved to be harbingers of something far more dangerous than conventional Imperial remnants. Deep in the unknown regions, on the hidden Sith world of Exegol, ancient cultists who served Palpatine in ways even Vader never suspected begin stirring from decades of hibernation. These are the Sith eternal. Fanatics who view the dark side not just as a source of power, but as a religious doctrine that demands absolute devotion. To them, Vader's apparent redemption represents the ultimate heresy, a betrayal of everything they believe the Sith should represent, led by a being calling himself the Dark Apostle. 1905. A former Jedi who fell to the dark side centuries ago and has sustained himself through forbidden Sith alchemy. 1905. These cultists begin gathering forbidden artifacts and recruiting Force-sensitive individuals who can be corrupted to their cause. Their goal extends far beyond simple revenge against Vader or restoration of Imperial rule. They seek to transform the galaxy itself into a manifestation of the dark side, a realm where the Force's light is extinguished forever. The first signs of their activity appear as seemingly unrelated incidents across the Outer Rim. Entire settlements go silent without explanation, their inhabitants found days later standing motionless in perfect formation, their eyes reflecting an unnatural inner light. Ancient Sith temples on forgotten worlds suddenly flare with energy after millennia of dormancy. Force-sensitive children across the galaxy begin experiencing the same nightmare. Visions of darkness consuming the stars themselves. Luke brings these reports to his father as they work together on establishing protocols for the new Jedi Training Academy. The collection of incidents forms a pattern that chills both men to their cores. This isn't random dark side corruption or the work of untrained Force users experimenting with powers they don't understand. Someone with profound knowledge of Sith lore is conducting a coordinated campaign using techniques that even Vader finds disturbing. These are not merely Imperial remnants seeking to restore the old order, Vader explains as he studies the intelligence reports with growing alarm. What you're describing sounds like the work of Sith Eternals, cultists who served my master in ways even I was not aware of. If they're moving openly, it means they believe the galaxy is vulnerable to their influence in ways it has never been before. The revelation that some Imperial threats extend beyond conventional military forces changes the strategic equation dramatically. The New Republic leadership, already stretched thin by the challenges of governing a diverse collection of worlds with wildly different cultures and needs, realizes that they face enemies who cannot be defeated through normal diplomatic or military means. The cultists' methods prove sophisticated beyond anything previously encountered. They use ancient Sith alchemy combined with modern biotechnology to create what can only be described as dark side infections, a form of corruption that spreads from person to person like a disease, but affects the soul rather than the body. Entire populations can be converted to fanatical service within days, their individual personalities subsumed into a collective dark side consciousness. The infection process is insidious, beginning with subtle changes in behavior and gradually escalating to complete personality replacement. Victims become more aggressive, more suspicious of outsiders, more willing to accept authoritarian control. They report dreams of unity and purpose, of belonging to something greater than themselves. By the time the physical changes become apparent, the glowing eyes, the unnaturally coordinated movements, the ability to sense others' thoughts, the conversion is irreversible through conventional means. Worse, the corruption appears to be spreading through the Force itself. Jedi and other Force sensitives who attempt to heal infected individuals find themselves at risk of corruption as the dark side infection attempts to travel back along their healing connections. Several young Jedi fall victim to this trap before Luke and Vader develop protocols for safe interaction with corrupted populations. The New Republic's initial military response proves not only ineffective, but counterproductive. Conventional weapons cannot distinguish between willing cultists and infected civilians. Orbital bombardment of corrupted worlds eliminates the immediate threat, but at the cost of innocent lives. Ground assaults result in entire units being converted to the enemy cause, their weapons and knowledge turned against their former allies. It becomes clear that only Force users with specific knowledge of Sith techniques can hope to combat this threat effectively. But the number of qualified individuals is pitifully small. Luke, Vader, Mara Jade, and perhaps a dozen other survivors of Imperial Inquisitor programs or old Jedi traditions. Against a threat that appears to be spreading across multiple star systems, their resources are woefully inadequate. The turning point comes when Vader proposes a solution that horrifies Luke and terrifies New Republic leadership. To effectively counter the Sith corruption, he argues they need more than just knowledge of dark side techniques. They need individuals willing to risk corruption themselves by wielding dark side powers in service of the light. What you're suggesting is impossible, Luke argues during a heated debate in the New Republic's temporary capital. The dark side corrupts everything it touches. You can't use evil methods to achieve good ends without becoming evil yourself. Vader's response comes from bitter experience. I did not say it would be easy, or safe, or without cost. I said it would be necessary. The infection we face cannot be countered by conventional Force abilities, any more than cancer can be cured by healthy eating. Sometimes, treating a disease requires accepting smaller harms to prevent greater ones. The philosophical debate that follows splits the nascent Jedi community down the middle. Traditionalists, led by surviving prequel-era Jedi, argue that any use of dark side powers is inherently corrupting and therefore forbidden. Pragmatists, including many of Luke's students who have seen the devastation caused by the Sith corruption, believe that desperate times require desperate measures. Luke finds himself torn between competing loyalties. His commitment to Jedi principles and his recognition that traditional methods are proving inadequate against this new threat. The decision becomes more urgent when reports arrive of entire sectors falling to the corruption, their populations transformed into extensions of the Dark Apostle's will. The resolution comes from an unexpected source. Leia, despite her lack of formal Jedi training, volunteers to undergo the experimental treatment that Vader has proposed, a carefully controlled exposure to dark side knowledge that might provide immunity to the corruption while maintaining connection to the light. Her reasoning is characteristically direct. If the technique works, it could be replicated across the Force-sensitive population. If it fails, better to lose one person than entire worlds. Her volunteer service galvanizes support for the desperate plan. If Princess Leia is willing to risk corruption for the galaxy's sake, how can others refuse to at least attempt Vader's proposed solution? A carefully selected group of volunteers, including Luke, Mara Jade, and several of the stronger new Jedi students, agree to undergo the dangerous training. The process takes place in the deepest levels of the rebuilt Jedi Temple, in chambers warded with protective symbols and monitored by every remaining Jedi Master. Vader serves as primary instructor, guiding his students through the theoretical foundations of dark side corruption and the mental disciplines required to resist it. The irony is not lost on anyone. The galaxy's most notorious fallen Jedi teaching others how to avoid his fate. Each lesson is a carefully controlled experiment in exposure to dark side knowledge. Students learn to recognize the subtle whispers of corruption, to identify the emotional vulnerabilities that make individuals susceptible to dark side influence, to maintain their moral center even when wielding powers traditionally associated with evil. The training is exhausting, both mentally and spiritually, requiring participants to confront their own capacity for darkness while never losing sight of their commitment to light. Several students don't complete the training, recognizing that they lack the emotional stability to safely wield dark side knowledge. Others show signs of corruption and are immediately withdrawn from the program, their exposure carefully limited to prevent permanent damage. But those who do complete the course emerge with abilities that no traditional Jedi has ever possessed. The power to heal dark side corruption without becoming corrupted themselves. The first field test takes place on Dathomir, where reports indicate that the entire Night Sister clan has fallen victim to the Sith corruption. Luke leads a small team of the newly trained Jedi to the planet's surface, expecting to find either a dead world or a population of fanatical cultists. What they discover instead defies all their expectations. The Night Sisters have not been corrupted in the traditional sense. Instead, their natural affinity for dark side powers has made them partially immune to the infection, creating a bizarre hybrid state where they retain their personalities and free will while manifesting some symptoms of corruption. They serve as unwilling conduits for the Dark Apostle's power, their magic corrupted into something that serves his purposes rather than their own. The rescue operation becomes a delicate surgical procedure, requiring the Jedi team to separate the artificial corruption from the Night Sisters' natural dark side abilities. The process is dangerous for all involved, as any mistake could result in either the Night Sisters' death or the Jedi's corruption. But Vader's training proves its worth. The team successfully cleanses the corruption, while leaving the Night Sisters' inherent abilities intact. The victory provides proof of concept for their methods, but it also reveals the true scope of the threat they face. The Dark Apostle's corruption network extends far beyond what they initially suspected, touching thousands of worlds across multiple galactic sectors. Intelligence gathered from the cleansed Night Sisters indicates that the cultist leader has been building his power for decades, waiting for the right moment to reveal himself. That moment comes with a coordinated strike that demonstrates the full extent of the Sith Eternal's capabilities. Simultaneous attacks on major New Republic installations across the galaxy, carried out not by conventional forces but by populations of corrupted civilians who had been living normal lives until activation commands triggered their conversion. The attacks are precisely coordinated, targeting key infrastructure and government facilities with inside knowledge that suggests extensive infiltration of Republic systems. The Battle of Coruscant becomes the conflict's defining moment. As Luke and his team work desperately to counter corruption in the capital's population, Vader confronts a truth he had hoped never to face again. The Emperor's final contingency plan, executed not by loyal Imperials, but by Sith cultists who view Palpatine's defeat as merely a temporary setback in their eternal war against the light. Fighting through the corrupted streets of Coruscant, Luke and Vader make their way toward the old Imperial Palace, where intelligence reports suggest the Dark Apostle has established his primary command center. The building, once a symbol of Imperial oppression, has been transformed into something far more sinister, a focal point for dark side energy that pulses with malevolent life. The corruption here is so intense that even their specialized training struggles to protect them. Luke feels his connection to the light side wavering as they penetrate deeper into the palace, while Vader confronts memories of his own time serving darkness in these same halls. The emotional weight of the location, combined with the active corruption field, creates a perfect storm of psychological and spiritual pressure. They find the Dark Apostle in the throne room, where Palpatine once held court. Seated not on the Emperor's ornate chair, but on a twisted construct of bone and metal that pulses with dark side energy. The being that turns to greet them barely resembles anything that was once human. Centuries of dark side corruption have transformed him into something that exists as much in the Force as in physical reality. So, the Master returns to his domain. The Dark Apostle speaks, his voice echoing with harmonics that suggest multiple consciousness sharing the same form. I had hoped you would come to reclaim your rightful place as Lord of the Sith. Instead, I find you corrupted by sentiment, weakened by attachment to these light-sided fools. Vader's response carries the quiet authority of someone who has seen both sides of the Force and chosen his path deliberately. I am no longer what I was, nor am I what the Jedi expected me to become. I am something new, a being who has walked in darkness but chosen to serve the light. You represent everything I once was and everything I refuse to become again. The battle that follows tests both father and son beyond their limits. The Dark Apostle wields corrupted Force powers that seem to bend reality itself, while his control over the palace's corruption field allows him to attack on multiple levels simultaneously. Physical combat blends seamlessly with spiritual warfare as the three beings clash not just with lightsabers and Force powers, but with competing visions of what the galaxy should become. Luke provides raw power and emotional strength, his connection to the light side of the Force burning like a beacon in the corrupted environment. His abilities have grown far beyond what they were during his confrontation with the Emperor, shaped by years of training and his experience with dark side corruption techniques. But even his enhanced powers struggle against an enemy who has had centuries to perfect his understanding of the Force's darker aspects. Vader contributes knowledge and technique. His understanding of both light and dark side methods, allowing the team to counter attacks that would otherwise be unstoppable. His redemption has not diminished his connection to the Force. If anything, his acceptance of both his past and his present has made him more powerful than he ever was as a pure Sith. He fights with the precision of a master swordsman and the wisdom of someone who understands the true cost of power. But the Dark Apostle's advantage lies in his willingness to sacrifice anything and anyone for victory. As the battle intensifies, he begins drawing power not just from the corruption field, but from the infected populations across Coruscant, using their life force to fuel increasingly devastating attacks. The cost to innocent civilians becomes horrific, as thousands of corrupted citizens collapse from the energy drain. It's this callous disregard for innocent life that ultimately provides the key to victory. Luke realizes that the Dark Apostle's power source is also his weakness. By maintaining control over so many corrupted minds simultaneously, he has made himself vulnerable to a coordinated counterattack that targets his entire network at once. Working together, father and son execute a desperate plan that requires them to temporarily link their consciousness through the Force, combining Luke's light side mastery with Vader's knowledge of dark side techniques. The fusion creates something unprecedented, a Force ability that can cleanse corruption on a massive scale, but only at enormous personal cost to the wielders. The cleansing wave that erupts from their joined consciousness spreads outward from the throne room, racing through Coruscant's population and beyond to touch every corrupted mind in the system. For a moment, the artificial darkness that has plagued the galaxy begins to lift, as millions of infected beings suddenly find their individual consciousness restored. But the effort nearly destroys both Jedi. Luke collapses, his life force depleted by the massive expenditure of energy required to purify so many minds simultaneously. Vader, having channeled both light and dark side powers through his scarred body, suffers what appears to be complete system failure as his cybernetic components overload and shut down. The Dark Apostle's scream of rage and disbelief echoes through the Force as his carefully constructed network of corruption crumbles around him. Centuries of planning, decades of careful cultivation of dark side followers, all undone in a single moment by the combined will of a redeemed Sith and a Jedi who refused to give up on his father's capacity for good. In his fury, the cultist leader attempts one final attack, pouring all his remaining power into a strike intended to kill both father and son. But his effort comes too late. The cleansing wave has already severed his connection to his power sources, leaving him with only his own centuries-old strength to draw upon. The attack, while still formidable, lacks the overwhelming force needed to penetrate the protective barriers that Luke and Vader maintain, even in their weakened state. Vader, summoning strength from reserves he didn't know he still possessed, rises to face the Dark Apostle's final assault. His lightsaber, no longer the crimson blade of a Sith, but a brilliant blue-white beam of pure Force energy, meets the cultist's attack with steady determination. This is not the wild fury of Darth Vader or the desperate heroism of a traditional Jedi. This is something entirely new, a perfect balance of power and restraint, aggression and compassion, strength and mercy. The duel's conclusion comes not through superior technique or overwhelming force, but through a simple choice. When the Dark Apostle's guard drops for a crucial moment, Vader has the opportunity to deliver a killing blow. Instead, he chooses to disarm and incapacitate his opponent, demonstrating the very mercy and restraint that the cultist had mocked as weakness. "Your way leads only to destruction," Vader tells the defeated Dark Apostle as New Republic forces arrive to secure the throne room. "I have seen where that path leads, lived its consequences, suffered its emptiness. There is another way, harder, more demanding, less immediately satisfying, but ultimately more rewarding. The choice is yours, as it was mine." The Dark Apostle's capture marks the end of the Sith eternal threat, but the aftermath requires months of careful work to fully cleanse the corruption from affected worlds. Luke and Vader, both severely weakened by their ordeal, work with teams of specially trained healers to identify and treat remaining pockets of infection. The process is slow and delicate, requiring individual attention for each affected person. The experience transforms both men in ways that go far beyond their physical recovery. Luke gains a deeper understanding of the Force's complexity, recognizing that true wisdom lies not in avoiding the dark side, but in acknowledging its existence while choosing light. Vader completes his journey from redemption to true inner peace, finally able to let go of the guilt and anger that have defined him for decades. More importantly, their victory demonstrates the possibility of synthesis, the idea that light and dark aspects of the Force can be understood and even wielded by those with sufficient wisdom and moral grounding, without corruption or fall to evil. This becomes the foundation for a new understanding of Force philosophy, one that acknowledges both the dangers and the potential benefits of comprehensive Force education. The New Republic, having witnessed the effectiveness of Luke and Vader's combined approach, endorses the establishment of a new kind of Jedi training program. The curriculum includes not just traditional light side techniques, but careful instruction in recognizing and resisting dark side influences. Students learn about the emotional and philosophical roots of corruption, developing the self-awareness and moral clarity needed to make good choices even when faced with terrible temptations. Vader becomes the program's primary instructor in dark side resistance, sharing his hard-won knowledge with a new generation of Force users who must be prepared for threats that the old Jedi Order never imagined. His classes focus not on Sith techniques themselves, but on the psychological and emotional vulnerabilities that make individuals susceptible to corruption. Students learn to recognize the warning signs in themselves and others, to seek help when they feel themselves being drawn toward darkness, and to trust in the support of their community rather than attempting to handle everything alone. The Academy itself becomes a symbol of the galaxy's renewal and growth. Built on Coruscant but incorporating architectural elements from dozens of different cultures, it represents the New Republic's commitment to unity in diversity. Former enemies study side by side, Imperial defectors learning alongside rebel veterans, humans working with dozens of alien species, former criminals seeking redemption through service to others. Luke serves as the Academy's director, but the day-to-day instruction is shared among a diverse faculty that includes Mara Jade, teaching intelligence and investigation techniques, Leia instructing in diplomacy and conflict resolution, and various alien masters sharing their species' unique understanding of the Force. The goal is not to create a monolithic Jedi Order, but a community of Force users who can serve the galaxy's diverse needs while maintaining their individual cultural identities. Perhaps the Academy's most important innovation is its emphasis on transparency and accountability. Unlike the old Jedi Order, which operated in secretive isolation from the galactic community, the new institution maintains open communication with civilian authorities and regularly submits to external oversight. Students and faculty alike understand that their power comes with responsibility, not just to the Force, but to the ordinary citizens they serve. Vader's role in this new order extends far beyond teaching. He works with New Republic intelligence services to identify and neutralize remaining Imperial threats. His intimate knowledge of Imperial systems proving invaluable in the ongoing process of galactic reconstruction. He participates in diplomatic missions to former Imperial worlds, his presence serving as both a symbol of the possibility of redemption and a reminder of the consequences of choosing darkness. His relationship with his children continues to evolve as well. Leia, while never fully forgiving him for the destruction of Alderaan, comes to understand the difference between Anakin Skywalker and Darth Vader. Their conversations, initially stilted and formal, gradually become more natural as they work together on various New Republic projects. She values his strategic insights and his understanding of the political dynamics that shaped the Imperial era. When Leia has children of her own, she makes the difficult decision to allow them to know their grandfather, though under careful supervision and with full knowledge of his past. The children, growing up in a galaxy where redemption stories are common and accepted, show none of their mother's initial reservations. To them, Vader is simply Grandfather Anakin, a wise old man with interesting stories and a deep understanding of right and wrong. Luke's children, when they arrive, benefit from having both a father who understands the light side and a grandfather who intimately knows the dangers of darkness. Their Force training begins early but proceeds carefully, with multiple instructors and constant attention to their emotional and psychological development. They learn not just techniques and philosophy, but the practical skills needed to maintain balance in a complex and often challenging galaxy. The Academy's influence extends far beyond Force training. Its research departments study the intersection of Force abilities and conventional technology, leading to breakthroughs in medical treatment, environmental restoration, and interspecies communication. The diplomatic corps that graduates from its conflict resolution programs helps prevent dozens of potential wars, while its archaeological teams work to preserve and understand the galaxy's diverse cultural heritage. Years pass, and Vader's health, while never fully recovered from his original injuries on Mustafar, stabilizes enough for him to take on greater responsibilities. His work with corruption survivors helps establish support networks for individuals recovering from dark side influence. His research into Force healing techniques contributes to medical advances that benefit Force users and ordinary citizens alike. But perhaps his most significant contribution is the example he provides. News of Anakin Skywalker's fall and redemption spreads across the galaxy through official channels and unofficial stories, becoming a cornerstone of New Republic mythology. The tale evolves in the telling, sometimes emphasizing different aspects depending on the audience. But the core message remains consistent: that no one is beyond redemption if they're willing to acknowledge their mistakes and work toward change. Former Imperial officers cite Vader's example when seeking amnesty and opportunities to serve the New Republic. Criminals and outlaws use his story as motivation to turn their lives around. Entire planets that collaborated with Imperial oppression find the courage to confront their past and work toward reconciliation with their victims. The galaxy discovers that redemption is not a single dramatic moment, but a daily choice to do better than yesterday. The Force itself seems to respond to these changes. Jedi across the galaxy report new insights into the nature of the Force, new abilities that seem to bridge the gap between traditional light and dark side powers. The rigid categories that once defined Force philosophy give way to a more nuanced understanding that acknowledges the spectrum of Force expression while maintaining clear moral guidelines. This evolution in Force understanding leads to the development of new techniques that would have been impossible under the old paradigms. Healers learn to use controlled applications of aggressive Force powers to fight diseases and repair injuries that traditional methods couldn't address. Negotiators develop empathic abilities that allow them to understand all parties in a conflict without becoming emotionally compromised. Scholars create Force-enhanced research methods that accelerate scientific and cultural discoveries. The New Republic itself transforms as it incorporates these new approaches to governance and problem-solving. Decisions are made not just based on political calculations or economic factors, but with consideration for their impact on the Force and the spiritual well-being of the galaxy's inhabitants. Environmental protection becomes a priority not just for practical reasons, but because healthy ecosystems support healthy Force connections. Trade and diplomatic relationships improve as negotiators trained in Force-assisted conflict resolution help resolve disputes that have persisted for centuries. The Academy's archaeological teams help different species rediscover lost aspects of their heritage, strengthening cultural identities while building bridges between diverse communities. As the New Republic matures into a stable galactic government, it faces new challenges that require all the wisdom and skill its reformed institutions can provide. The discovery of new hyperspace routes opens previously unknown regions for exploration and potential colonization, bringing contact with species and cultures that have developed in isolation for millennia. Some of these first contacts prove friendly, while others reveal civilizations that view the galaxy's current inhabitants as invaders or inferiors. Vader's experience with diverse alien cultures, gained during his years as an Imperial enforcer, but tempered by his redemption and new understanding of cooperation over domination, proves invaluable in these situations. He helps develop protocols for first contact that emphasize mutual respect and cultural sensitivity, drawing on hard-learned lessons about the consequences of imposing one culture's values on another. The exploration efforts also uncover remnants of ancient civilizations that predate both the Republic and the Empire, some of which developed their own relationships with the Force. These discoveries challenge existing assumptions about the nature of Force abilities and the history of the galaxy itself. Archaeological teams led by Luke and Vader work carefully to study these sites without disturbing their spiritual significance or damaging fragile artifacts. One of the most significant discoveries comes on a world in the deep core, where ruins suggest the existence of a civilization that achieved balance between light and dark aspects of the Force thousands of years before the first Jedi Order. The site contains art, writings, and technological artifacts that demonstrate a sophisticated understanding of Force applications that the current galaxy is only beginning to rediscover. The implications are staggering. The rigid light divided by dark dichotomy that shaped galactic Force philosophy for millennia may have been an aberration rather than the natural order. The ancient civilization appears to have thrived for centuries, using integrated Force techniques that avoided both the Jedi's emotional suppression and the Sith's unlimited aggression. Study of these ruins becomes a collaborative effort involving scholars from across the galaxy, with Vader serving as a key interpreter due to his unique experience with both light and dark side traditions. His insights help unlock texts and artifacts that might otherwise remain incomprehensible, while his presence reassures researchers who worry about the dangers of studying dark side knowledge. The work is slow and careful, with extensive safeguards to prevent corruption or accidental activation of dangerous technologies. But the results prove revolutionary, providing new approaches to Force training that could help future generations avoid the conflicts that have repeatedly torn the galaxy apart. As the years turn to decades, Vader ages with a dignity that surprises those who knew him only as the Emperor's enforcer. His hair turns completely gray, then white, while lines of wisdom replace the harsh creases of anger that once marked his face. His movements slow, but his presence in the Force grows stronger rather than weaker, as if his acceptance of both his past and his future has removed barriers that once limited his potential. He becomes a grandfather in truth as well as title, spending time with Luke and Leia's children with a patience that amazes those who remember his former impatience with failure or delay. The children love him without reservation, unencumbered by adult knowledge of his past crimes. To them, he is simply a wise storyteller who knows interesting things about the Force and always has time to listen to their problems. His relationship with his own children deepens as well. Luke, now a master teacher and leader in his own right, values his father's counsel and insights. Their conversations range across philosophy, politics, strategy, and the everyday challenges of raising Force-sensitive children. The easy companionship they develop is something neither imagined possible during their early conflicts. Leia's relationship with Vader remains more complex, shaped by her memories of Alderaan and her role as a political leader who must balance personal feelings with public responsibilities. But time and shared experiences gradually build a foundation of mutual respect, if not complete forgiveness. She values his strategic insights and his understanding of the political dynamics that shaped the Imperial era, while he admires her strength and her commitment to justice tempered by mercy. The galaxy that emerges from these decades of growth and change is stronger and more unified than the Old Republic ever was. The shared struggles against Imperial remnants and Sith corruption have created bonds between diverse worlds that go far beyond mere political alliance. The New Republic becomes a true community of species and cultures working toward common goals while maintaining their individual identities and traditions. The Jedi Academy's influence spreads as its graduates take positions throughout galactic society, not as a separate caste of warrior monks, but as integrated members of communities who happen to have specialized training in Force applications. They serve as healers, teachers, negotiators, researchers, and in countless other roles that benefit from their unique abilities and perspective. Some become politicians, using their enhanced empathy and insight to craft more effective and fair legislation. Others join exploration teams, their Force abilities helping to navigate unknown regions and communicate with newly discovered species. Many choose careers in education, medicine, or social work, applying their training to solve practical problems that affect ordinary citizens. The rigid hierarchy and isolation that characterized the old Jedi Order gives way to a more flexible and integrated approach. Force users remain connected to the Academy for continued education and support, but they live and work alongside non-Force users as equals rather than as a separate class. This integration helps prevent the arrogance and detachment that contributed to the old Order's downfall. Vader's final years are marked by a peace he never expected to achieve. The constant anger and fear that drove him for decades have been replaced by a quiet contentment that comes from knowing he has done everything possible to atone for his past mistakes. He continues teaching and consulting until his health begins to fail, but even then, he remains mentally sharp and emotionally balanced. His death, when it comes, is peaceful, a gradual fading rather than the violent end that seemed inevitable during his years as a Sith. Luke and Leia are with him, along with their children and grandchildren. His final words, spoken to Luke in a voice that carries no trace of the mechanical rasp that once terrified a galaxy, are simple but profound. "Tell them," he whispers, his hand gripping his son's with surprising strength. "Tell them that redemption is always possible. No matter how far someone has fallen, no matter how much darkness they have embraced, the light is always there, waiting for them to choose it. The choice is what matters. Not perfect success, but the willingness to try." His funeral becomes a galactic event, with representatives from thousands of worlds gathering to pay their respects to a man whose life embodied both the worst and best of what sentient beings are capable of achieving. The ceremony reflects the complexity of his legacy. Acknowledgement of his crimes coupled with recognition of his redemption, mourning for his victims, balanced with celebration of his contributions to galactic peace. Luke delivers the primary eulogy, speaking not just as a son but as a Jedi Master who understands the full scope of what his father accomplished. He speaks of Anakin Skywalker, the hero, Darth Vader, the villain, and Anakin redeemed, the man who proved that even the most fallen could find their way back to the light. The galaxy that Vader leaves behind bears the permanent marks of his influence, both as destroyer and redeemer. His crimes are remembered in memorials and museums, serving as warnings about the dangers of unchecked power and the importance of moral courage. His redemption is celebrated in stories and teachings that inspire others to believe in the possibility of change. The Force itself seems different in a galaxy where such complete transformation has been proven possible. The absolute categories of light and dark give way to a more nuanced understanding of balance and choice. Future generations of Force users grow up with the knowledge that falling to darkness is not permanent damnation, but a mistake that can be corrected through genuine effort and commitment to change. The New Republic continues to evolve and grow, facing new challenges with wisdom gained from past struggles. The Academy produces healers, scholars, and peacekeepers who serve throughout the galaxy, while the government applies lessons learned from both Republic and Imperial failures to create more just and effective institutions. Perhaps most importantly, Vader's survival and redemption establishes precedents that shape galactic culture for generations to come. War crimes courts focus on rehabilitation as well as punishment, seeking to transform enemies rather than simply defeat them. Diplomatic protocols emphasize the possibility of change and the importance of offering second chances. Educational systems teach about the complexity of moral choice and the ongoing nature of ethical development. The legend of Anakin Skywalker, his fall, his redemption, and his final peace becomes one of the galaxy's defining myths, a story that speaks to the fundamental questions of identity, responsibility, and the possibility of change. Children across thousands of worlds grow up knowing that no mistake is permanent, that no choice defines them forever, that tomorrow always offers the chance to be better than today. In the end, Vader's survival changes not just his own fate or that of his family, but the fundamental character of galactic civilization. His story proves that redemption is not just an individual possibility, but a cosmic principle, that the universe itself supports those who genuinely seek to transform themselves from agents of darkness into servants of light. The Death Star's destruction, which once seemed like the end of the Empire's threat, instead becomes the beginning of something far greater. A galaxy-wide recognition that even the most terrible evil can be transformed into the most powerful good, if only someone has the courage to choose change over certainty, hope over despair. That's our theory. The Star Wars universe is a galaxy filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey to a galaxy far, far away, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. The sentence satisfies few completely but offers something to all factions. Those seeking justice see consequences for Vader's actions, while those advocating mercy recognize the possibility of redemption. Military leaders gain access to his knowledge of Imperial operations, while Jedi representatives hope to learn from his understanding of the dark side's dangers. But even as the trial concludes, the Sith cult threat continues to grow. Reports come in of entire worlds going dark, their populations apparently converted to fanatical service of the dark side. The cultists' methods are sophisticated, using ancient Sith alchemy and forbidden force techniques to corrupt both individuals and entire ecosystems. Luke, now working closely with his father to understand these threats, accompanies him to investigate one of the affected worlds. What they find defies conventional understanding. The planet's surface is covered in twisted vegetation that pulses with dark side energy, while the inhabitants move with eerie coordination, their eyes glowing with unnatural light. This is beyond mere cult activity, Anakin observes, his Force senses recoiling from the planet's corrupted aura. Someone has been studying the deepest Sith teachings, techniques that even the Emperor considered too dangerous for regular use. Their investigation reveals evidence of Sith artifacts being used to create what amounts to dark side infection, does. A spreading corruption that transforms both living beings and inanimate matter into extensions of the cult's will. The implications are terrifying. If left unchecked, this corruption could spread from world to world, creating an empire of the dark side that would make the old empire look benevolent by comparison. The New Republic's conventional forces prove inadequate to combat this threat. Military attacks against corrupted populations are not only morally questionable but practically ineffective, as the dark side corruption appears to regenerate damaged areas and convert attackers to the cult's cause. Only Force users with specific knowledge of Sith techniques can hope to reverse the corruption process. This realization transforms Vader from a prisoner seeking redemption into an essential ally in the galaxy's survival. Working with Luke and the few other trained Force users available, he begins developing countermeasures to the Sith cult's corruption techniques. His knowledge of dark-side alchemy proves invaluable in understanding how the corruption spreads and how it might be stopped. The process is dangerous for all involved, but particularly for Vader. Using his knowledge of the dark side requires him to touch those powers again, to remember techniques and abilities he had hoped to leave behind. Each time he employs Sith lore to counter the cultists' work, he risks falling back into the darkness that once consumed him. Luke remains close during these operations, serving as both partner and guardian. Their working relationship grows stronger as they face the cult threat together. But it's tested by moments when Vader's use of dark side knowledge brings out echoes of his old persona. The balance between using necessary knowledge and maintaining redemption becomes increasingly precarious. The cultists' ultimate plan reveals itself during a climactic confrontation on Korriban, the ancient Sith homeworld. The Dark Apostle and his followers have been working to resurrect not just Sith teachings, but the Sith themselves, using the dark side corruption to create a new form of Sith existence that transcends death itself. In the Valley of the Dark Lords, surrounded by the tombs of ancient Sith masters, father and son face an enemy that embodies everything Vader once was and everything Luke has fought to prevent. The Dark Apostle offers Vader one final chance to reclaim his dark legacy, to embrace the power that could make him master of the galaxy once again. You could rule as no Sith has ruled before, the cultist promises, his voice echoing with unnatural resonance. The corruption we have created would be yours to command. Worlds would kneel before your power. The galaxy itself would become an extension of your will. But Vader's response comes not with anger or temptation, but with the quiet certainty of someone who has seen beyond the dark side's promises. I was promised power before, and it led only to emptiness. I was offered dominion, and it brought only isolation. The dark side promises much, but delivers only suffering, both to those who serve it and those who suffer under it. The battle that follows tests both father and son to their limits. The Dark Apostle wields corrupted Force powers that seem to bend reality itself, while his cultist followers attack with the coordination of a hive mind. But Luke and Vader fight as a team, their combined abilities creating something greater than the sum of their parts. Luke provides the raw power and emotional strength, his connection to the light side of the Force burning like a beacon in the darkness. Vader contributes knowledge and technique, his understanding of Sith methods allowing them to counter attacks that would otherwise be unstoppable. Together, they represent something the Sith had never faced: a partnership between light and redeemed darkness. The climax comes when the Dark Apostle attempts to corrupt Luke directly, using Sith alchemy to poison his connection to the Force. For a moment, it seems the young Jedi might fall as his father once did, overwhelmed by visions of power and control. But Vader intervenes, using his own understanding of corruption to shield his son from the worst effects. In that moment of sacrifice, using his knowledge of the dark side to protect rather than dominate, Vader completes his redemption in a way that mere words could never accomplish. The Force itself seems to respond, burning away the last traces of dark side corruption from his spirit and allowing him to stand fully in the light for the first time in decades. The Dark Apostle's defeat sends shockwaves through the cult network, severing the connections that maintained their corruption across multiple worlds. Without their master's will to sustain them, the corrupted populations begin to recover, their natural connections to the Force gradually reasserting themselves over the artificial darkness. The victory comes at a cost, however. Both Luke and Vader are exhausted by their ordeal, their Force abilities depleted by the intense combat with dark side powers. More significantly, Vader's use of Sith knowledge has left him changed, not corrupted, but marked by his willingness to risk damnation for his son's sake. In the aftermath of the cult's defeat, the galaxy begins to truly heal from the wounds inflicted by decades of Imperial rule. Vader's role in saving countless worlds from dark side corruption cannot be ignored, even by his harshest critics. Public opinion, previously divided between those seeking vengeance and those advocating mercy, begins to shift toward acceptance of his redemption. The New Republic formally recognizes Vader's service and begins integrating him into their efforts to build a better galaxy. His knowledge of Imperial systems proves invaluable in transitioning former Imperial worlds to democratic governance, while his understanding of the Force's darker aspects helps establish safeguards against future Sith threats. Perhaps most importantly, his relationship with his children continues to evolve. Leia, while never fully forgiving him for the destruction of Alderaan, comes to understand the difference between Anakin Skywalker and Darth Vader. When she has children of her own, she allows them to know their grandfather, though under careful supervision and with full knowledge of his past. Luke establishes a new Jedi Academy with his father, serving as a special instructor in the dangers and temptations of the dark side. Vader's classes focus not on Sith techniques themselves, but on the psychological and emotional vulnerabilities that make Force users susceptible to corruption. Students who might otherwise fall to pride, anger, or despair find guidance from someone who has walked that path and understands its ultimate destination. The Academy itself becomes a symbol of the galaxy's renewal. DAT, former enemies working together, dark knowledge transformed into wisdom for the light, the possibility of redemption extended even to those who have fallen furthest. Vader's presence reminds everyone that no one is beyond saving, that the choice between light and dark is made fresh each day. Years pass, and Vader's health, while never fully recovered from his injuries, stabilizes enough for him to take on greater responsibilities. He works with New Republic intelligence to identify and neutralize remaining Imperial threats. participates in diplomatic missions to worlds still scarred by Imperial rule, and contributes to the growing body of knowledge about Force powers and their proper use. His greatest contribution, however, may be his example. The legend of Anakin Skywalker's fall and redemption spreads across the galaxy, offering hope to those who believe they have made unforgivable mistakes. Former Imperial officers seek to make amends for their service to tyranny. Criminals and outcasts find the courage to change their lives. Entire worlds that collaborated with the Empire work to rebuild trust with their neighbors. The galaxy that emerges from this period is stronger and more unified than the Old Republic ever was. The shared struggle against Imperial oppression, followed by the work of rebuilding and reconciliation, creates bonds between disparate worlds that mere political treaties could never achieve. The New Republic becomes not just a government, but a genuine community of species and cultures working toward common goals. But perhaps the most significant change is in the Force itself. Where once it seemed divided between absolute light and absolute dark, the presence of a redeemed Sith demonstrates the possibility of balance, of growth, of transformation. Force users across the galaxy report new insights into the nature of the Force. New abilities that seem to bridge the gap between traditional light and dark side powers. This balance becomes the foundation for a new understanding of the Force, one that acknowledges both its light and dark aspects, while emphasizing choice, growth, and responsibility. The rigid dogmas that contributed to both the Jedi Order's fall and the Sith's corruption give way to a more nuanced philosophy that treats the Force as a living entity to be partnered with rather than controlled. In the end, Vader's survival changes not just his own fate or that of his family, but the very nature of the galaxy itself. His journey from darkness to light demonstrates that redemption is possible for anyone willing to acknowledge their mistakes and work toward change. His story becomes a cornerstone of New Republic values, a reminder that the goal is not to achieve perfection, but to never stop growing, learning, and choosing to do better. The Death Star's destruction, which once seemed like the end of the story, instead becomes the beginning of something far more complex and ultimately more hopeful. In saving his father, Luke saves not just a single person, but the galaxy's faith in the possibility of redemption. In choosing to live with the consequences of his actions, Vader proves that true strength lies not in power over others, but in the courage to change oneself. That's our theory. The Star Wars universe is a galaxy filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey to a galaxy far, far away, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel.